Section 6 of The Romance of an Old Fool. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Roger Moline. The Romance of an Old Fool by Roswell Field. Section 6. In the end, the united opposition was too much for Mary's arguments, and to town we went. The pleasure of the journey, on my part, was somewhat clouded as to the welcome we should receive from Prudence, and truly it acquired my greatest powers of dissimulation to feign an easy indifference and air of authority before that worthy creature, as with the most studied politeness and formal hospitality she received us at the gate. Prudence and I had sparred so many years that we were like two expert athletes, and while neither apparently noticed the other, each was perfectly conscious of the adversary's slightest movement. Hence I detected at once her strong aversion to Mary, whom she immediately selected as a probable mistress, and I saw her several times vainly try to repress a grimace of disdain and wrath. It was my first impulse to follow Prudence into the kitchen, after the ladies had gone to their rooms, and make a clean breast of the untoward tidings, but I lacked the moral courage and contented myself with an inward show of strength. Why should I pander to this woman's caprices? Was I not master in my own house? Should I not do as I pleased? I would punish her with the severity of my silence, and perhaps in a week or two, when she was more tractable, I would condescend to tell her exactly how matters stood. In this I would be firm. But the next morning, before my guests were out of bed, I decided that I was not acting wisely. Was not Prudence an old, faithful, and trustworthy servant? Had she not been loyal to my interests, and was not her whole life wrapped up in my comfort? Surely I wronged her to withhold from her the confidence she had so fairly earned, and the flush of shame came to my face as I reflected that I was indulging my first deceit. I took a turn in the garden, in the heavenly cool of the early morning, to compose my nerves for a very probable ordeal, and then I walked boldly into the kitchen where Prudence sat, with a wooden bowl in her lap, paring apples. It was one of the unwritten laws of the cuisine that Prudence was never to be disturbed when engaged in this delicate operation. She maintained that it destroyed the symmetry of the peel, and I dare say she was right. Consequently she looked at me reproachfully as I entered, and bent again more assiduously to her work. I was much flustered by the ill omen, but I knew that if I hesitated I was lost. So I advanced valorously, though with accelerated pulse, and said with all the calmness I could command, "Prudence, I think it only right to tell you that I am going to be married." One apple rolled from the bowl down along the floor and under the kitchen stove. I cannot conceive of any shock, however great, that would cause Prudence to lose more than one apple. Partly to conciliate, and partly to conceal my own trepidation, I made a gallant effort to rescue the wanderer, and as I poked the hiding-place with my stick, I heard her say, "Lord, I know it had come." "The fact that it has come, Prudence," I answered with a sickly attempt at gaiety, "does not seem to be a reason why you should call with such vehemence on your Maker. There does not appear to be any need of providential interposition. Things are not so bad as all that." I always used my most elegant English when conversing with Prudence. If she did not understand it, it flattered her to think that I paid this tribute to her intelligence. "Mr. John," she said, and there was a suspicious break in her voice, For 20 years I have tried to do my duty by you, and now that I must go—" "Go?" I interrupted. "Who said you must go? Who spoke about anybody's going? You certainly do not expect to turn that bowl of apples over to me and leave me to get breakfast." "No, Mr. John, I shall go on and do my duty, as I see it, until you have made all your plans and are comfortable." "Now, look here, Prudence, I am very comfortable as things are, thank you. And you will pardon me if I say I cannot understand why you should go at all. I shall continue to eat, I hope, after I am married, and I think it altogether probable that I shall require a housekeeper and a cook. I believe they do have such things in well-regulated families. At my age, and with my experience, and considerin' how we have lived, Mr. John, I couldn't get along with a mistress, 'specially," she added with a touch of malice, "with a woman considerable older than me." "Older than you? What are you talking about? Miss Kinglake is young enough to be your daughter." Another apple rolled on the floor. "Miss Kinglake?" she exclaimed in astonishment. "That lamb? Good Lord, I thought you were going to marry the other one." "Prudence," I said rather hotly, for I did not relish her amazement, "you will oblige me by not speaking of these ladies as the lamb and the other one. I might gather from your remarks that I am a sort of ravening wolf, instead of a well-meaning gentleman who is merely exercising the privilege of selecting a wife. But," I said, checking myself, for I was ashamed of my explosion, "I shall be magnanimous enough to believe that you are delighted with my choice, and that I have your congratulations. You will be glad to know that Miss Kinglake and I are perfectly satisfied with each other, and that we are both entirely satisfied with you. And now that we understand the situation, I think I may presume that we shall have breakfast at the usual hour this morning, and tomorrow morning, and for many mornings to come. And, by the way, Prudence, while I have honored you with my confidence, permit me to impress it upon you that this revelation is not village gossip as yet, and you will put me under further obligations by not mentioning the circumstance. Good morning, Prudence. Kindly call the ladies at 8 o'clock." And thereupon I hastily departed, leaving the good woman in a state of stupefaction, since, for the first and only time in our long and controversial association, had I retired with the last word. Taking a second turn in the garden, I encountered Malachi, and my conscience reproached me. Am I doing right, I asked myself, in withholding the glad news from this faithful servant, who has shown himself so worthy of my confidence? Is it not my duty to tell him, not so much to interest him in his future mistress, as to demonstrate the trust I repose in him? Malachi received my confidence with less excitement than I had expected. In fact, I was slightly humiliated by his seeming lack of gratitude. He touched his hat very respectfully, and observed irrelevantly that the roses below the arbor were looking uncommonly well. This was a poor reward for my attempt at consideration, and further convinced me of the uselessness of establishing anything like intimate relations with the proletariat. "By the way, Malachi," I said in parting, "you will keep this matter a profound secret. Miss Kinglake and I are desirous that we shall not be annoyed by village chatter and premature congratulations." Having discharged my duty to my good servants, I felt that my obligations, so far as the relation with Phyllis was concerned, were at an end, and the morning wore away without further misgivings of disloyalty. In the afternoon Bunsey came over for his daily smoke, and as we sat together in the library I noticed the entire absence of suspicion in his manner. My heart smote me. Truly, I reasoned silently, I am behaving ill to an old friend who has never withheld from me the very secrets of his soul. Should I not be as generous, as outspoken with him as he has always proved to me? Should I not confide to him this one precious secret, at the same time swearing him to preserve it as he would his life? I blew out a ring of smoke, and then I began with the utmost seriousness. "Bunsey, how do you like the ladies?" He shifted his position, tipped the ashes from his cigar, and replied tranquilly, "Oh, I dare say I shall in time." The answer vexed me. Bunsey was a bachelor, and should have been therefore the more impressionable. I forgot for the moment, in my annoyance, that he was a novelist, and had been so diligently creating lovely and impossible women to order that he was not easily moved by the realities of humanity. "At all events," I replied with delicate irony, "I am glad that the future is hopeful for the ladies. My reason for asking the question was simply to lead the way to a confidence I intend to repose in you. To proceed expeditiously to the end of a long story, I intend to marry one of them." Bunsey's tranquillity was unshaken. "Which one?" "Which one?" I echoed with heat. "Why, Miss Kinglake, of course." "Does she intend to marry you?" "Naturally." "Or unnaturally?" "Confound your impertinence!" I roared. "What do you mean by that?" "No impertinence at all, my dear fellow. In fact, it is most pertinent. Miss Kinglake is a girl, and you—well, you voted for Grant." "Which is your gentle way of saying that I am too old." "No, not too old. Just old enough to know better." "We are never too old to love," I said, conscious that I was uttering a melancholy platitude. "Too old to love? Heaven forbid! But we may be too old to marry, at least to marry anybody worth while. Come, Stanhope, tell me, do you really love this young woman?" "Love her? Here I have been telling you that I intend to marry a charming girl, and you turn about and ask me if I love her? Of course I love her. I have been loving her in one way and another for years." "What do you mean by that? I thought you only met her a few weeks ago." I smiled pityingly. "So I did. But for years she has been my affinity. Incidentally, I don't mind saying I began by loving her mother." Bunsey sat up straight. "Oh, you loved her mother. Was her mother pretty?" "She was as you see Phyllis. In fact, I think she was, if anything, a trifle prettier. We were playmates and schoolmates, and in the nature of things, if I had not wandered off to the city, I presume we should have married. Dear little Sylvia," I went on musingly, "I can see her at this moment, looking down from heaven and smiling on my union with her daughter. For if ever a match was made in heaven, this was. Confound it! What are you doing now?" While I was talking, Bunsey had reached over, taken a sheet of paper, and was busily writing. He looked up carelessly. "Your story interests me, and is such good material that I thought I would make a few notes. Young boy loves young girl, goes to city, forgets her, young girl marries, has charming daughter, dies, years pass, venerable gentleman returns, sees daughter, great emotion on part of V.G., thinks he loves her, proposes, accepted, no, there I think I must stop for the present. Oh, don't stop there, I beg, I said sarcastically. If you are thinking of using these materials for one of your popular novels, be sure to throw in a few duels, several heart-rending catastrophes, and other incidents of what you will call action, appropriately expressed in bad English. Bunsey was imperturbable. "Thank you for your appreciative estimate of my literary style," he replied coolly. "But really, my consideration for my old friend deprives me of the pleasure of robbing his diary." I was still out of temper. "Bunsey, I don't mind favoring you with a further confidence. You're an ass." With this parting shot I strode out of the library, when, remembering the sacredness of my revelation, I turned back. "Of course, you will understand, Bunsey, that however flippantly you may choose to regard what I have said to you, you will have the decency to keep the subject matter to yourself. I do not ask your congratulations or your approval, but I demand your secrecy." "The ass brays acknowledgments," answered Bunsey meekly, helping himself to another cigar. "You may rely on my loyal and devoted interest. The fact that I have heard your secret twice before today shall not open my lips or cause me to violate your trust." Notwithstanding my attitude of indifference, I was greatly troubled by Bunsey's unfeeling suggestion. Could it be possible that I had mistaken my own heart? Was I, yielding as I had believed, to the first strong passion of my life, only deluding myself with a remembrance of my vanished youth? I dismissed the thought impatiently. For, after all, was not Bunsey a hopeless cynic, a fellow without a single emotion of the ennobling sentiment of man toward woman, a sordid story-teller, who created characters for money, wrecked homes, committed literary murders, played unfeelingly on the tenderest sensibilities, and boasted openly that the only angels were those made by a stroke of the pen and retailed at department-store book-counters? And while thus reasoning, Phyllis came to me, so winsome in her girlish beauty, so radiant in the happiness I had infused into her life, so joyous in the pleasures of the present, that I laughed at my own doubts, reproached myself for my own unworthy suspicions, and straightway forgot both Bunsey and his evil promptings. End of section 6. Recording by Roger Moline.